I could find the whole meaning of life in those sad eyes. They've seen things you never quite say, but I hear. Come out of hiding, I'm right here beside you. And I'll stay there as long as you'll let me. Because you matter to me. Simple and plain and not much to ask from somebody. You matter to me. I promise you do. You matter too. I promise you do. You'll see. You matter to
It's
me.
addictive the minute you let yourself think. The things that I say just might matter to someone. All of this time I've been keeping my mind on the running away. And for the first time I think I'd consider the stay. Because you matter to me. Simple and plain and not much to ask from somebody. You matter to me. I promise you do. You matter too. I promise you do. You'll see. You matter to me. Dear baby, I hope someday somebody wants to hold you in their arms for 20 minutes. They don't pull away. They don't look at your face. And they don't try to kiss you. All they do is they wrap you up in their arms and hold you without an ounce of selfishness to it. I hope you become addicted, baby. I hope you become addicted to saying things and having them matter to someone. You matter to me. Simple and plain and not much to ask from somebody. You matter to me.
And now, your 60-second piano lesson.
All right, so real quick, you're just going to take any scale that you know, like the C major scale. You're just going to take the first note, you're going to play that one. You're going to take the third note, 1, 2, 3. You're going to lower it just a little bit, play that one. Then you're going to play the fourth note, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you get those ones so far. And then you're going to play the note that's in between the fourth note and the fifth note. So that's that one right there. So far we have 1, flat 3, 4, sharp 4, 5, and then play the one that is the seventh note of your scale, and then the last note of the scale. If you want to too, you can also lower the 7, play that one. So you got 1, flat 3, 4, sharp 4, 5, flat 7, 7, 1. That's the blues scale. Good luck, have fun.
And now, your 60-second piano lesson.
So today's lick is from Duke Ellington, and it's the key of... Welcome back to LearnPianoLive.com. My name is Jamin, and as you can tell from the countdown clock, the lesson is about to get started. In case you're new with this, there's a few things I'd like to show you to help you throughout the lesson. Hey, good news. Today you don't have to listen to my voice for the entire lesson. We have a guest. So we're going to be focused on the questions that you submitted in advance, but if you want to drop some live questions in on us, we'll do our best to get to all of those and still be respectful of our guest's time. So you can still download the PDF and the MP3, but there's no specific assignment that goes just with this lesson, because the goal is just to get some inspiration or get some advice, get some little nugget of wisdom that's going to help propel you one step farther down this journey, or maybe just to be entertaining. But whatever it is, I'm sure you'll enjoy it. These lessons are always guided and shaped by your questions, and if you're live with us today, there's a couple different ways you can do that. One is in the public live chat, and the other is the Ask Jamin a Question button, where you can ask me a question privately, and I won't share your identity in case you're afraid that your question is stupid. But it's not. If you're in the archives, though, then just open up the survey. At the end of that, there's a place where you can ask your question. I will say I frequently get questions from students in the archives watching a lesson from 6 months ago, and I have no idea what they're talking about. So please try to be as specific as possible. If you're watching this at LearnPianoLive.com, there should be a PDF and an MP3 button right next to this video. The PDF will often have additional video links inside, so you can get more in-depth instruction on each of the topics. And if you're the kind of person who likes to print out the PDF so you can make the same notes on your physical version as I'm making during the lesson, now would be the time to do that. The MP3 is just a play-along track so you can practice more after the lesson. If these live lessons start feeling random or meandering, it's because they are, on purpose. So if you're the kind of person who wants classical training with a step-by-step method, then you're going to want to check out Kloppel Academy on the website. It's included in your live lesson subscription, so you can do both or either. And the upper levels are seriously hard work, but it's going to take you all the way from ground zero all the way up to being ready to enter any major music college as a piano major in classical or jazz. And thankfully, I think that's about all we need to cover before the lesson. So if you'd stick around afterwards and fill out the survey, I would love your feedback. But for now, let's have some fun and make some music. Let's start here with the questions that are unrelated to music here. Outside of music, what are your other hobbies? Or what would people who know you be surprised to find out that you do?
Well, I do a lot of yoga that tends to help my lifestyle, and have recently done a lot of meditation. So those might maybe be considered hobbies, but they're really lifestyle practices for me that just bring me a lot of happiness and help me connect with people. So I also like connecting with people, making connections, and just, you know, having good experiences. So
awesome. How long have you been doing that? Is that a new thing?
I've been meditating for about 2 years now.
Okay. Like with an app?
What's that?
Like with an app, or just...
I actually started out with a 10-day meditation retreat in the Yosemite Valley.
Wow. You started
it's been pretty life-changing.
Yeah, that's what I hear. I've never been to one, but yeah. Was it like a silent retreat, or?
Silent retreat, yeah, and they're totally free. All the meals are provided. It's a pretty great opportunity. So
it's a free retreat?
Yeah.
Okay. That's really interesting. Okay.
It's called Vipassana meditation.
One more time.
I recommend it. Vipassana.
Okay. Awesome. What surprised you about that when you were there?
Well, what surprised me was that we'd be meditating all day, every day. And I'm used to, going all day at school and stuff and playing long sessions, but that's a whole different ball game,
Yeah. No, how long did it take your brain to break? Like
To break?
Yeah.
Well,
like...
I wanted to leave on about the 5th day, but, you persevere and you overcome, and it just makes everything in your life stronger, and it made my music stronger, which I'm thankful for.
That's awesome. So when you say you wanted to leave, like, I can't take this anymore, or like, this is stupid, or like, what was the feeling?
It's usual questions like, why am I doing this? This is really hard. But afterwards, you learn that once you're through it, you realize that anything worth doing is going to be hard.
Wow. All right. That's cool. And then you also do yoga. Are those intertwined for you, or they're just two separate practices that are both good?
They're kind of different traditions. And, I just do it because it makes me feel good. And when I don't do it, I don't feel as good. So that's reason enough for me,
Yeah. And you say it helps you connect with people, too.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, going to school here gets pretty taxing. And sometimes it's easier to feel really tired and maybe a little disconnected from people, a little even depressed sometimes, and I find that it helps with that. It's really really well-rounding. So
yeah. And when you say going to school here, you want to tell people where you are and what got you there and what you're working on?
Yes. So I am in my 5th year at the Eastman School of Music, which is in Rochester, New York, and
which is a big deal for people who don't know of music schools and jazz. So,
yeah, it's a little out of the way. We're far upstate New York, but it's essentially a similar program to Juilliard. It's a classical conservatory with a jazz department, smaller and more focused. There's just about 50 people in the jazz department and 10 really great professors. So we get a lot of one-on-one time, which is really valuable. So I've had some great experiences with some of the professors here.
That's cool. That's cool. Is there anything there that you didn't expect that was surprising when you got to the school about either the workload or level of players or instruction types?
Well, Eastman has quite a reputation. Some really great players have come out of here.
Yeah.
And after spending time here, I understand why, because it's very rigorous.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I didn't know coming in was all of just the wealth of opportunities that are available. On any week I can attend a performance of like a Dvorak symphony, or go see Umbira world music, or take part in a jazz concert. And there's just so many different people around here just really passionate about what they're doing, and when you're exposed to a community like that, it's really inspiring. One of the things that stood out to me that I got really into was music education, and I didn't know about that before. And I always knew that I wanted to share my music with people, but Eastman has one of the premier music education programs in the world. Really, they're at the vanguard of music education and learning theory. And there's a lot of great schools in upstate New York in the public education system, so they really tie into that. And so I've had a lot of opportunities to work in schools with children from as early as pre-kindergarten to high school. And
wow.
I'll be continuing next semester student teaching and working to get teaching certification. But I really found a passion in teaching here that I didn't know even really existed before until I came.
Wow.
So I'm very fortunate for that, and that's what I'll be pursuing after school.
Yeah, well, tell me a little bit about that. What kinds of things are becoming important to you, or you realizing are missing in music education, or like what's interesting to you in that field?
Well, especially in the jazz field, a lot of people think, oh, I want to perform, but I can just fall back on teaching, if performing doesn't work out. And that doesn't make good teachers.
That's for sure.
So I really learned what it takes to be a good teacher, and it means, you know, being attentive to your students' needs and ultimately learning how you learn yourself. So I think that by having studied performance, I've really learned how to teach myself, and now I can share that with others.
Yeah.
So
yeah, especially with my adult students, I get a lot of questions about how do I find a good teacher? How do I know a bad teacher when I'm with one? Because most people are going into it, of course, especially if it's their first teacher. They don't know. They just assume all the problems that they're having are their own problems and never blame their teacher for it.
yeah.
So what things go into both a really good teacher or a really bad teacher? How do people know if they're with someone they should stick with?
How do they know? Well, a good teacher should inspire the student. You know, if a student's frustrated and nothing's going right and they think they're not getting better, then that's not their fault. If they're coming back for lessons every week and they're working hard, they should be seeing some improvement, or at least feeling like they're accomplishing something. You know, a good teacher needs to empower the student, and things could be happening like the teacher's giving them too difficult assignments, or asking things that aren't reasonable of them, or just being too critical, or not making them feel like they're happy about what they're doing. You know, I feel fortunate because music's been a part of my life and it brings me a lot of joy. So I would hope that I can share that and communicate that to my students, you know, and get them excited about what they're learning.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the craziest thing for me has been going into a classroom of, you know, like third graders and singing songs with them, and I'm just sitting here like, wait, I'm a jazz piano player. Why am I doing this? You know?
Right.
But you go into that room, and if you're not excited about singing those songs, they show it. They just are. They're poking their friend. They're bored and.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So,
Well, and I love the other side of that too, which is that when they're excited about it, it's so organic and so natural for them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not focused on like whether they're doing it right or whether they're doing it wrong or whatever. They're just enjoying music, you know, the way it should be enjoyed, just the way it comes at them.
Music shouldn't be a chore.
Yeah. Yeah.
It should be fun. I mean, that's a total truism. Music is fun, but it can be really fun and it can be really profound. And as a teacher, I hope to have experiences like that with my future students.
Yeah. Yeah. So then, do you end up playing very much there in comparison to what you were doing when you were out here, or is it mostly all focused on just practicing and attending other?
It's whatever I make of it. In the past, I've had really intense academic semesters, which have been good, whereas in times like that, I haven't been able to play as much. But when I'm focusing on performing, which is currently I've been performing a lot, I have independent projects like a drumless trio with guitar and bass. I've been playing duo a lot with a couple of friends, and I'm preparing music for an upcoming recital that I'll be giving of some original music and some arrangements. And there are a fair number of gig opportunities out here, which I'm pretty grateful for. Mm-hmm. And I also, you know, I've been playing piano in church recently and playing church organ. So there are all kinds of performance opportunities available. And, you know, when I have the time or when I want to make time for it, that's when I really am able to put my all into it.
Yeah. Talk to me about the difference between playing piano and playing organ.
Well, immediately the organ doesn't have any sustain. You have to hold all the notes down.
Right.
So that's challenging. And then on top of that, using the pedals, you know.
Right.
I've started playing Hammond B3 organ too, which has been pretty fun.
Yeah, okay. Cool. And so then you want to talk to us about because when you say pedals, you really mean a separate keyboard you're supposed to play with your feet.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. So what are you doing with your feet? What's the role of that instrument down there?
Are you talking about church organ or Hammond?
Well, the churches I go to, it's the same thing. But yeah, either one.
Yeah, well, you know, they're different instruments altogether. That's the thing that I learned when I started working on it. And, you know, the piano gives you the facility, but the organ it's when you press down the keys, it's a completely different sound. It's so much fuller and more powerful, and that's, I think, what's drawn me to it. And then you have the role of the second keyboard, which is like it's like another voice, really. In both settings, it functions as the bass voice. So you could be playing one thing in your upper register, and then down low you can be accompanying yourself or playing a counter melody with your freaking feet. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Mentally, how is it more? Do you find it more taxing, or is it just like is it like going to a trumpet or something, or is it like piano times 3, or mentally what's going on there?
That's a good question. I found it's kind of like playing a drum set. If anyone's ever attempted playing kit, you've got, instead of 2 limbs or maybe a third one with the pedal, you've got 4, right?
Right.
You've got your 2 hands doing independent things, and then your right foot playing the bass drum and your left foot playing the hi-hat. And even doing 3 limbs versus 4 limbs is kind of a big jump. It's like you're adding another dimension.
Right. Yeah. Huh. Okay. And then talk to me about the difference between B3 and church organ.
Well, in church organ, you're really sustaining the pedals, so you have to connect them together. But the Hammond, if you're like walking a bass line with your left hand, you're going to be tapping the pedal, because it acts as the attack of a bass, like an upright bass.
Yeah.
So when you're playing organ in a trio with drums, to get it really swinging, you're tapping the bass with the pedals. Let's see. I got my keyboard here. I got a organ set up. Let's see. Let's see. What do I got? So the patch on my keyboard has the pedal sound already included in the patch. You can hear a little.
Yeah.
So you can hear. If I was playing a real Hammond right now, I'd be doing that with my feet.
Right. Okay. Wow, that's really interesting. I hadn't ever heard that before. The difference between those two. And so then church organ is just gonna be more sustained and connected and smooth and less percussive.
Exactly.
Wow, cool. All right, so sorry, I promised some students I'd get to their questions. So let me go through these, and you can make your answers as long or as short as you want. What are the 3 most important albums to own?
3 most important albums to own. That's a good question.
Sorry, I know that's a ridiculous one.
No, I mean, that's totally valid. Are we talking just for jazz or for piano players?
For Sterling.
For me?
Yeah.
Let's see. Well, if I can cover as many, I can give you a list of like 10, but if I had to put it down to 3, I would say 1 would be Kind of Blue. I mean, that's a totally overdone thing.
Sure.
But in terms of group playing and modern jazz sound, Bill Evans was doing things on that record that people are still, experimenting with today.
Yeah. Talk just a little bit about that. Like, if someone is not into jazz at all and they listen to that, what should they listen for? Why is it so amazing?
Listen for the colors. Listen for the variety of harmony and textures. It's like a painting. I mean, the name is so apropos, but also the group interaction. Listen to how what the piano does affects what Miles does. What the trumpet plays, and in turn, how the drums responds.
Yeah. Okay. Album 2.
Album 2. One that comes to mind for me is The Amazing Bud Powell. For piano, that's just kind of the gospel of vocabulary.
Yeah.
I mean, he's taking stuff from Charlie Parker, playing in that club at Minton's in Harlem. They were doing stuff, in the late 30s and early 40s that set the standard.
Yeah.
And I listened to that album, 100 times when I was 15.
Yeah.
And it really gave me everything I needed at the time.
Yeah.
So
yeah, Bud Powell's amazing.
Valuable.
Yeah. Okay, album 3? Is there an album 3?
Album 3? Oh, definitely Gerald Clayton's Life Forum.
Okay.
Have you heard of that record?
No, I haven't. Thank you. One more time.
Nice. The album name is Life Forum.
Life Forum. Okay. And what should people listen for in that one?
Oh, just the originality of the compositions. He comes from a really traditional background. His dad is John Clayton, and he's got an uncle named Jeff Clayton who plays saxophone, a total musical family, killing jazz players. His dad runs the Clayton Hamilton Orchestra out of L.A., and one of my teachers here, actually, Clay Jenkins, was telling me about how he'd go to those, he's in that band, and he'd go to those rehearsals, and he'd see Gerald as a toddler walking around, and his dad would pick him up from school, and he was already exposed to music at that early of an age.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that really makes its way into his playing, that traditional upbringing, and he's he can be one of the most swinginest, bluesy piano players. But this album is really an expression of his own voice, with the originality of the compositions, and he even has a vocalist on it that doubles some of the horn lines, which is a really interesting sound. And there's some really interesting odd meters, and just has some really beautiful melodies and really nice grooves, and it's just all around really, really great music, and it's really inspiring to me personally because it really opened up my conception of what jazz is, because when a lot of people think about jazz, they think about that traditional big band sound, for example, or even like more of a traditional like Miles Davis quintet type of sound, that being the first quintet, the second quintet being a lot more avant-garde, but he's absorbed the entirety of that tradition and put it into a new frame that incorporates his own sound. Right. And I think that album really embodies it. So for that reason, highly recommend it.
If you put it up there with Powell and Evans, I'm all over that. I'll be listening to that this week. Okay, so back to the education stuff. Who are some teachers you've had or musicians you knew who influenced you, and what do you remember most about them? What are the one or two characteristics that they had that you wanted to emulate or that were influential?
Well, currently I'm studying with Gary Versace, who is a pianist out of New York City. He just started working here at Eastman, and he's played with everybody. He's been in New York for almost 20 years. He often performs with the Maria Schneider Orchestra. He performs a lot with Ingrid Jensen, and he's played with anybody, like from Joe Lovano to John Schofield, and he's a great guy, at the end of everything. But one thing that I really idolize about him is his ability to fit into any musical situation. And he's done that by just recording with everybody. He's played with anyone and everyone in New York City, and he gets called back again and again because he just fits in wherever the music takes him.
Right.
So he's really sensitive to that, and it also shows in his personality. He's very open and accessible to people, and for me, I think that comes from his experience playing music.
Yeah. And so when you talk about fitting in or getting called back to a gig, what are some of the most important aspects or characteristics to have to get called back or to fit in, or what does that even mean?
Well, when you're talking about gigs and professionalism, the biggest thing is just being on time, being on top of your stuff, being prepared, being over-prepared, and being ready for whatever comes. Sometimes you might be totally not into whatever's happening, or you're feeling really bad, or you're you're sick, but you got to still show up and be on your best game,
Right.
you know. And that's what really makes that happen. And in terms of music, like fitting in, I've heard people use the analogy of, it's like stand-up comedy where there's this thing called anding, if you've heard of that. And basically it's when someone, you know, in improv comedy, when someone's offering like a joke, you have to go with it.
Right.
You know, because if you made a joke to me and I just like totally dead-faced didn't respond, you'd probably feel pretty bad, like, oh man, he didn't like my joke.
Right.
You know, but it's like I have to respond to your joke and go off of it and support and acknowledge what you did and build on that.
Right.
And in a musical setting, that means, you know, being receptive to what everyone's doing and responding, and not responding with judgment, you know, responding in a supportive way.
Yeah. Well, and perhaps taking consideration, kind of the same thing with the ending, like, what is the scene? What needs to be added to the scene to make the scene better, and rather than like, what can I do here to show the skills that I have, and always bringing yourself, but changing yourself to what your environment is. Seems like that's a big deal too.
Yes, definitely. You're right on.
And that then of course requires then that you have built up enough tools that you don't just have one tool that you always bring every time, but you've got different things you can do within the to fit in the category. Any other teachers, instructors, influences that are particularly memorable?
Yes, I've had the good fortune of coming in contact with the professor by the name of Bill Dobbins at Eastman, and you may know the name. He's got a lot of pedagogy out in the jazz sphere. He's got a number of books. Most notably, I've been working with a series that he did called The Contemporary Jazz Pianist, and in the 4th volume, I believe, he has a series where he created etudes on one singular tune. I think he did it on the changes of All of Me.
Okay.
And he wrote an etude in the style of 21 different jazz pianists, all the way from Jelly Roll Morton and James P. Johnson and Fats Waller, all the way up to Bill Evans and Chick Corea and everyone in between. And it's just phenomenal because he's transcribed solos from all of those pianists and assimilated it into a really accurate depiction of what their style and what their sound is like.
Right.
And so he's just one that, I mean, he's a verifiable genius. He's got an encyclopedic memory, which is really inspiring because he's got this vast knowledge and understanding of jazz music.
Yeah.
And in my contact studying with him, one of the most valuable things that I gained, one of the most valuable lessons, was that the answers are all in the music. And sometimes as pianists we kind of think like, oh, what should I be working on? What am I, I'm kind of struggling of thinking of stuff to practice, or what do I need? And for him, the answers are all in the music, and he's pursued that by just, his way was transcribing a lot of things and learning what they were actually playing.
Mm-hmm.
And for me personally, that's been valuable to understand that, if I'm looking for something or, not knowing where to go next, it's like just find inspiration in the music.
Yeah.
And find something that really gets you excited about playing and do it. Learn how Bud Powell plays that solo on Celia. What's that big solo break? Get it in your hands, because those are the masters, and they loved what they did, and their music is still with us. It's in the form of recordings, and we can draw inspiration from those.
Yeah. Now, just some terminology stuff. Transcribing is listening to something and figuring it out or writing it down?
Well, it can take different definitions. The most immediate one is writing, actually literally transcribing something, which means writing it down, listening to it and writing it, in our case, on staff paper. But you don't have to necessarily write something down to transcribe it. That process is really time-consuming, and one could argue that you could get more benefit from just memorizing it and learning it by ear,
right,
and being able to play it by ear, because after all, jazz is an oral tradition. So
yeah,
So that really plays to our strengths when we can listen to a solo and replicate it on our own instrument, whether it's piano or any other instrument, and be able to play it by ear.
Yes. Okay, so I got two things backed up now. One is an etude is, that sounds like a fancy word. It means what?
Well, it's basically a short piece that is used for a specific purpose. So in this case, the etudes, as part of the solo piano series, are all short pieces in the style of each pianist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And then so each of the you said it's 21 composers, 28.
I could be mistaken, but it's around that number. It's a good number.
And each of them, it gets one chorus one time through the song, or
so it's a whole piece. Some of them are anywhere from 3 to like 7 or 8 choruses.
Okay, so it's this a long etude. It's the same tune.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So they're separate etudes then. It's a collection of etudes. Oh,
yes.
Okay. I was thinking of it as one piece, but of course they're all separate. Okay. Now, so you're probably the perfect person to ask this, and then we'll do one or two last questions. So you said the infamous phrase, "The jazz is an oral tradition." What does that mean to you?
What does that mean to me? Well, being in an institution where I'm studying jazz in a classroom, I think about that pretty often. To me, jazz is not reading chord symbols on a lead sheet with a melody and trying to make music out of that. To me, like I said about Bill Dobbins, it comes from the recordings. Those are the sources,
Mm-hmm.
and I get more excited by listening to those than listening to someone reading a lead sheet that they don't know.
Right. Yes. So then what's a non-oral tradition then? What would jazz look like if it was, what is it? Name a tradition that's not an oral tradition and how it contrasts from jazz, if you can.
So if you look at the Baroque tradition, that being before the time of Bach, so Bach died in 1750, so anything up until about there is considered Baroque. And that music, they didn't have the technology for recordings,
Mm-hmm.
so it was all learned from sheet music. The difference there being that in those pieces, most of the notes were written down, right? So you could learn the music, in the case of classical music also, you can just learn the music from reading a score, which the composer can include all of the knowledge that you need to perform the score accurately and to their liking. But what's interesting about the Baroque tradition is that it also included improvisation. That's not something that not a lot of people talk about, but something I've been exposed to here at school, which has been very interesting. There's an early music program here that is pretty prominent, and they talk about improvisation a lot. But they were improvising in the settings of like churches and house concerts,
Mm-hmm.
and people were hearing improvising. And back in those days, people were more musically literate and would be playing piano in their homes. A lot of people, had access to instruments, so improvisation was a lot more common, and they had a kind of a mutual understanding of how to do it, and that was transmitted orally as well. But in the case of classical music, it's totally about the notation. The
Mm-hmm.
composer has a specific idea in mind, and you read the music and execute it.
Right.
And when I've been studying classical here, I actually ran into some problems because I was listening to recordings and playing the way that the performers were playing, but the music said something else.
Hmm.
And so my teacher said, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "Well, I heard it in a recording." And he's like, "Well, stop doing that. You have to. That's not accurate. You need to read the music accurately."
Wow. Okay. That
kinda
sounds like so that sounds like the opposite then of.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. Huh. So the difference in the traditions would be similar then to like someone writing a play and then having other people act it out, where there's some limitation on how much direction you can give them about how this thing plays out in your head versus how they're going to play it out in their head, versus like watching a movie and then taking the lines out of that movie, because then you've actually seen the real performance. Is that a fair comparison?
Well, I'd say the delivery of the lines would be per the director's original intent if you were learning it from a movie, if you were reenacting a movie.
Okay,
but
yeah.
if the lines are just written down, you know, it's up to your creative license how you want to interpret them and perform them.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So in jazz, we have a lot of creative license. There's only one F7, you know, but F7 can mean a lot of different things.
Sure. Yeah.
If I'm playing in the style of Bud Powell, my F7 is going to be a lot different than if I'm playing in the style of Chick Corea.
Yeah. Can you show us?
Sure. I mean, if I'm playing an F7 Bud Powell, I'm going to throw this down in the left hand. But if I'm playing Chick Corea, it's going to be more like... kind of different sound. Well, totally different sound.
Yeah.
And, I can display that because I've listened to both of those pianists a lot and have internalized their sound a little more. But if I'm just reading a lead sheet, it's not going to tell me what it wants me to sound like.
Right.
You know, and that's the beauty of the music is I can sound however I want to sound, and my influences dictate what comes out on the instrument and what I hear.
Yeah.
And it's personalized.
Right. And then that takes us full circle back to the whole what does the context require? What are the other people doing? Is more a Bud Powell situation or Chick Corea situation. Yeah. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. You've already given us a lot of it. I want to thank you very much for answering these questions. Usually, especially for these pre-recorded lessons, we get people who watch in the archives who didn't see us post about it ahead of time. So hopefully in the next couple days, I'd be able to send you a couple questions. And if you get a chance to answer the stragglers, then
Sure.
that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, happy to.
And we will put up links to all of your stuff, and go check out that album. My favorite song was the last one that had to do with trains. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of that track.
Yes, Be Gone with the Train.
Yes, I love that one. So
there's some Coltrane changes in there. Yeah, our tenor player Ben Britton, he just rips into that one. He has really gotten into Chris Potter and Ben Wendell, and his first album he recorded a couple of tunes with Chris Potter.
Wow.
So
wow,
he knows what he's doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks again for making some time for us. Appreciate it.
Yes, thanks for having me.